Thank you so much for everyone over at Madison 365, sponsors and everyone who did everything behind the scenes to get this all set up so we could have this beautiful day today. And thank you all again for joining us. We're kicking things off. We are batting lead off in the first session here, Tokened on an Island. It's the shared experience of men of color in leadership positions. And so, as I said before, my name is Rashad. I serve as a community engagement program officer at the Greater Green Bay Community Foundation. I'm originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a graduate of Marquette University. And working at the foundation, I'm responsible for facilitating some of our collective impact initiatives, as well as some of our various grant programs. Outside of work, I contribute to the community by serving as a police and fire commissioner for the city of Green Bay. In addition to that, I serve on a number of board of directors, mainly NeighborWorks of Green Bay and Family Services. And when I'm not doing those things, I actually participate in a diversity and equity task force for our Chamber of Commerce, and then also do a number of different things for our students in the Green Bay Public School system. But that's enough about me. Today, we've got three wonderful individuals. I had an opportunity to meet them last night, and you'll get an opportunity to meet them today through our discussion. Up first, we have Joaquin Altoro. He is the CEO of the Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority, better known as WHEDA. Mr. Joaquin Altoro is strategically positioning WHEDA to leverage affordable housing in a more holistic way to grow economic prosperity in all types and sizes of communities, in particular marginalized communities that have been underserved for decades. His unique approach is advancing WHEDA's mission throughout Wisconsin and cultivating an ecosystem of greater equity in housing, affordable housing, and economic opportunity. Mr. Altoro has a 29-year career in banking. He is a member of the Governor's Interagency Council on Homelessness, a board president of WHEDA Foundation, a board member of Lift Wisconsin, a community development entity. He's also a board member and executive committee member of the National Council of State Housing Agency, a Bank of Chicago. He's also a member of the Consumer Advisory Board of the U.S. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and an advisory board member for LISC Milwaukee. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Altoro. Up next, we also have Reverend Dr. Alexander Gee. He is the lead pastor for Foundation of Life Church and president and founder of Nehemiah Center for Urban Leadership Development. Reverend Dr. Gee is the lead pastor of Fountain of Life Church, president and founder of the Nehemiah Center for Urban Leadership and Development, and its renewed initiative, Justified Anger. Gee is a husband and father, as well as a writer, adjunct facility worker, community activist, life coach, international lecturer, and relief worker. He's considered a serial social entrepreneur, having started 5 successful companies and initiatives, and currently directs nearly 40 employees. For almost 30 years, he has established himself as a thought leader in leadership development and cross-cultural relationships, both nationally and internationally. Locally, through his vision, the programs of Nehemiah have focused on youth empowerment and leadership development, family and community wellness, economic development, and reentry services for the formerly incarcerated. Nehemiah was also recently awarded a $1 million grant from the UW-Madison School of Medicine and Public Health for continuing its work in addressing health disparities among African Americans in Wisconsin. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Gee. And up next, we have Dr. Sheldon Good. He's the president and CEO of Icarus Consulting. Dr. Sheldon Good is the president and chief executive of that organization. This is a veteran-owned consulting firm that specializes in helping organizations create inclusive cultures that leverage diversity and inclusion for a competitive advantage. Icarus Consulting accomplishes this by developing strategies that enable clients to attract, develop, and retain highly skilled, talent from emerging diverse workforces. At the same time, he looks to enhance engagement, knowledge, and skill of current employees. Forbes magazine has recognized Dr. Good as one of the top 10 D&I trailblazers in this country. He is a business executive with over 20 years of diversity and inclusion, HR, and higher education experience, and he has held executive positions for companies ranging in size from 300 million to 11 plus billion. He has developed or implemented talent management programs, performance management systems, sales incentive plans, labor relations strategies, and large-scale cultural change initiatives. And those are the people who we'll be hearing from today. And so with that in mind, I think it's important that we kind of get into the discussion. We're really looking forward for some back and forth with you all. So please feel free to enter some questions in the chat, and we hope to get to those later. Without further ado, getting into some of the questions, looking for a brief answer to this one, guys. Tokenism at work is the exploitation of someone's identity in order to check a diversity box. When you hear that very simple definition, what feelings or memories does that bring up for you?
I'll jump on it since I'm the diversity guy. I'm all for the past 2 decades plus. I've been the person inside of organizations responsible for helping everyone, particularly people of color, feel like they belong as a part of the organization. To answer your question as far as tokenism, and oftentimes you're that. Either I've been the highest ranking Black person in the room, or in some cases, the only Black person in the room. I chose to always use that as a resource for power. It's like everybody always wanted to know what Black people in the company were thinking. So all eyes were on me, not to, take anything away from Tupac. And when you have that 15, you get 15 seconds, per day to make an influence. I always try to use that 15 seconds to be the voice for the other people who didn't have the opportunity to be able to talk to people in senior leadership.
I appreciate that. Joaquin, do you have any, or Dr. G, you have any feelings on that?
Yeah, since you called, I'll jump in, Doctor. The fact that you ended Sir Shelton with the word opportunity, and in most cases, I've been used to this. We've been in this position, being the only one. And sometimes even the little definition that you had mentioned of tokenism, where you're being picked to represent all, right? And so really, I'm this person that is glass half full in most cases. And so I try to really take this as an opportunity to see where is the opportunity to really represent, to gain influence and power, and then obviously use that to benefit any way, the fact that I'm representing either communities of color or the Latino community, whatever it is. So really trying to be positive about this, because I'm not trying to be in an emotional funk about it, because that just holds me and my people back.
Appreciate that.
And Brother Cobb, I'll just jump in by saying, I grew up in Madison. I'm 57. My family's been here for a little over 50 years. The total minority population was probably around 2% when we moved here from Chicago. And so whether someone was trying to diversify or not, I was diversity whenever I walked into a classroom or a gym class or a department store. I think the ugliness. So the one question was, what does it remind you of? It reminds me of my life growing up. But I think the downside of tokenism is we know our abilities and we know what we bring to the game. However, sometimes when we're in a space, because we are the most talented and people want our perspective, when we begin to question ourselves and ask ourselves, is this an act of tokenism? Yeah. I think the underbelly of it, not just when people have thought it, but when they've really said, come, you've got the experience. You've trained, on 3 continents. You've got the most experience. And we question ourselves. Yeah. That's the ugliness of tokenism, when we buy into it unconsciously.
Yeah.
I appreciate those contributions. I want to bring this home a little bit. To Wisconsin. In Wisconsin especially, we spend a lot of time navigating spaces that are predominantly white. How have you been able to navigate those spaces and still maintain your identity and sanity?
Yeah.
I'll jump in. I'm going to put my pastoral hat on for just a minute. One of my favorite stories in the Old Testament is just the story of Moses, who was Hebrew but raised in an Egyptian household to lead his people into liberty. I feel that by growing up in Madison, I was raised in Pharaoh's household. I was trained in classes with kids whose fathers and mothers were department chairs at UW-Madison. And I didn't know until I was an undergrad that I recognized the names in all of these departments. I was like, that's Nick's dad. That's Asha's mother. Like, oh. So I feel like by having experience in Madison, Wisconsin, particularly UW-Madison, that I've learned to compete with white people at their own game. And so I understand innuendo. I understand dog whistle politics. I understand things that they're really not saying, things they're trying to say, and learn how to read between the lines. And many people of color, this is really true for Black folks, we're intuitive. So we know how to really fill out a room. So what has really helped me in navigating space like Wisconsin is that there were not enough of us to be isolated. And so I had to, if I want to have friends, I had to play hockey. I had to go sledding, tobogganing. I had to do those things if I didn't want to just sit in the house watching, cable television. So for me, what's helped me is beating my white colleagues at their own game because we have the same teachers. And so I realized I'm learning from the best, but I'm going to use it to help my people.
Appreciate that.
Right.
Anybody?
Arturo, you want to go or?
Sure. So I'm entering my 29th year as a banker. And so I work in the industry of banking in Wisconsin, not very diverse when it comes to those that make the decisions, when it comes to leadership. And then if we get even more specific, commercial banking, housing, tax credit, administration, tax exempt bonding, like you ain't finding any of us in there. But, you know, when I think about in my growth, when I first came into banking, the ask was, you know, we would like for you as a Latino banker to work with the Latino community. And the privilege of having a job and being hired and paid and not having any power, I had to take it. I had to do what I had to do. And the question was, how do I take that opportunity of potential tokenism and really create a value, personal value for me? And so there's always been this thought process in financial services is the fact that if we have to serve communities of color, it's an expense center. It's going to cost us money. We don't make money. And so, you know, it was interesting because I, as a person of color in banking, I had to do two things. At first, I had to work with my communities of color to show them that trust me, trust the bank that I work with, that we're going to really want to bring these services to you.
Yeah.
But on the other end, how do I actually work with the actual financial system to show them that we can actually, we can work with these communities. They're not an expense center. You can actually make money, but at the same time have a social impact. That is something that I think both sides of the equation, white and communities of color, don't understand, that you can actually make money, but at the same time have social impact, positive social impact. Right now, it's a sexy term called social entrepreneurship. But back then, I was just playing this game like, how am I in the middle here and trying to show that? And so what I did is I took this opportunity of potential tokenism. And what I ended up saying is, I'm going to teach not only my community how to use these resources and these tools to increase wealth, but I'm going to show these banks, these financial systems, that we can work with these communities, that you can actually put additional resources, make money, because these banks are for profit. They have a responsibility to their shareholders. We can make money, but at the same time levitate and raise, the potential wealth and the credit limits of these communities. So, you know, it was interesting. I continue to work in that space and place. Very difficult, but it's really looking at being in these situations and understanding how do you present this to be a positive of working with our communities for both sides of the equation.
Excellent. I get this question all the time. People always ask, how can you be your authentic self and then still be successful in, organizations that are still led, predominantly by white males? And so it may be helpful to help people understand what that feels like when every day you know that you are being watched, you're being evaluated, and people are making inferences about other people who may look like you, and they're making inferences about their performance and their potential. So, you're carrying around that burden and what it looks like and feels like, especially in corporate America. Every day you wake up and you say, do I wear a blazer with a shirt? Do I wear a tie today? What color should I wear a blue shirt or a white shirt, or should I go, blazerless? And, did I shave? And you're constantly, before you even get to work, you're expending tons of emotional energy so that you can show up perfect, which obviously is going to be less than authentic. It wasn't until later in my career, I was fortunate enough to have a person like Dr. G in my life. His name is Reverend Gerald Durley. I need to give him his props. He sat me down. He says, look, never let anyone, don't let anyone's evaluation of your past performance or future potential change what you know to be the truth. But you have to know what the truth is. You have to know what the truth is. So when it comes to your authentic self, who are you? And why would you want to? And if you're as good as you think you are, if you got an unlimited potential, then why aren't you not showing up like that every day? and letting the chips fall where they may. And it wasn't until I got that that counts on that coaching. It's happened to coincide with my rise in, up through the ranks. So finally I got to the point where I got some good coaching and I could afford to be totally authentic. And then I realized, damn, these people are paying me to help other people be authentic. How can you do it if you're not doing it yourself? And once I did that, the burden came off. But I didn't get there by myself. I got there from other people who had learned and then took me aside and helped me. So I would tell people, be authentic, be transparent, be vulnerable, be you. And that's how you will navigate through and maintain your sanity.
Hey, Rashad, I'm going to jump in here because that was going to happen. And I got a question for you, Sir Shelton. Because of who we're talking today, we're talking to, I believe our audience is going to be the young men of color.
Yeah.
You're saying be you, be true, but the sometime is that that becomes very difficult being young and trying to understand who you are because everybody's trying to tell you who you are. Social media is trying to tell you who you are. White men are trying to tell you who you are. What's your advice when you're still young trying to figure out who you are?
Yeah, it's easy. Number one, I would say to accept, and I know this is hard, accept two things. Especially as you are trying to get your career and find things out, and we understand that there could be some downside in terms of compensation, stuff like that. You're going to have to realize you're going to have to maybe make some sacrifices. But man, do something that as a skinny kid from Philadelphia, I was too arrogant to do. I came out of Philly, came into corporate, came out of the military, thinking I knew everything. Guys, you don't know everything. Find you a Dr. G, find you an Arturo, find you a Rashad, find you a Shelton. Reach out on LinkedIn, and you're on social media, but who are you connected with? Well, what's five seconds? Connect with one of us or people like us and say, hey, if you had to give me one piece of advice, what would it be? And that's we've gotta for as Black men, we gotta understand that we need each other. It's okay to say, I need you, Rashad. Can you help a brother out? What's wrong with us? Man, the only way we survive to this point is by having each other's back. Everybody, we know, we've heard it before. Reach one, everyone teach one. I think we gotta double down on that and remind the young brothers, look, it ain't, you're not soft if you say, hey, I could use a hand. I think that's the message. At least that's the message I'm giving to my two sons.
Right.
It's like, don't be too proud to say you don't know everything, because you don't, and ask for some help. I'm just going to call it like I see it.
Appreciate that. Dr. G, any follow-up before we move to the next question?
No, they handled it, man. They handled it.
I appreciate that. So kind of moving this conversation towards current state, not that what you all experience doesn't happen currently, but thinking about our workplace environment during COVID and all of the uprisings that happened last summer and currently going on. How did you feel about your position in your company? How did you feel about your relationship with coworkers? Were there any unsaid expectations that you may have felt within the workplace as a result of you being the one potentially? How do you all feel about that?
Gentlemen, I'll jump in to get this started, as I know you're thinking about the answer. It's been interesting, especially with all that is happening of recent in the position that I have, being appointed by the governor, being on the cabinet, being one of the two Latinos on the cabinet, and then at the same time being the CEO of an organization that has 165 employees, and then the impact that WIDA has on a humongous ecosystem of people. People have been asking this question to me about, well, what do you think about what is happening? And it gets a little overwhelming. It gets overwhelming, the fact that I have to speak for, everything that is happening. And the timing of how quickly I have to respond. Like I wanted to just internalize and almost sometimes deal with some of the sadness or the unfortunateness, if that's a word or not, around this. But people look at you real quick, like, no, what do you think? And how do you respond to this? And will you respond publicly? It is very difficult. However, that is That's what happens when you choose to be a leader. That's what happens when you choose to step up, is that those type of responsibilities come. And so the way that I responded was, at 40, I turned 47 years old today. So at 47, I thank you. At 47, I have lived a lifetime of experiences that have given me an opportunity to speak very authentically. And I just spoke very authentically about how I feel about everything that's happening. And so, there is this tug and pull around the fact that I have to speak for everybody, but at the same time, understanding that, who else? If I don't, who else is going to say something? Should we leave it quiet? So I'm okay with the struggle, because the one thing, and then I'll leave it here, I understand that struggle is I'm growing myself and I'm sharpening my tools. Yeah. And I'm hoping that in itself is a lesson for everyone that's listening.
Yeah.
I'll jump in next. I talked about learning how to play hockey as a kid because I grew up in Wisconsin. And a famous Wayne Gretzky quote is, he became great because others followed the puck, but he skated to where the puck was going.
Right.
So I feel like with our organizations, right. I'm the CEO of it. I put the board together, I put the staff together, right. And his focus was to really strengthen the Black community. What I realized about 7 years ago is that if I don't talk to my white allies and other non-Black folks about their role in identifying systemic racist systems and helping to dismantle it, we're only working on one side of the aisle or one side of the equation. So right. We started talking to particularly our white allies about, here's what you inherited. Here's what's going on in America and what's happened. Our approach has not just been implicit bias, but really looking at history. I was an undergrad major in history. And I felt that if white people understood the history and the constitutionality of racism and how those things were really woven into law, so it's not just a figment of my imagination,
right?
But you must understand these things. And so when everything happened that took place last year, because we were skating to where the puck was going, a lot of white folks said, damn, who's been talking about this? Who's been talking to us as white people about our role? We have now seen what happened with Breonna, with Ahmaud, with George. We need to go someplace. And so they came to where we were and asked, what do we need to do? Tell us what to do. And so we just finished an online U.S. Black History course that's 2 hours a week for 9 weeks, and 1,700 white people went through it. Our largest class up until then was 270. And it's just hitting them with facts. We use tenured faculty from the university, and then we let them debrief, not with a Black facilitator, white men, you're going to sit in a group and process this. White women, you're going to sit in a group and process this. But also the Latino community, Jewish American folks have started coming to the class because they're starting to say, we want to know what was practiced on Black people to understand how it's perfected on us. Not comparing our scars with each other, but just realizing this is written into constitutional law with Black folks. Right. And so let's just follow the money. Let's follow what's going on. So for me, what happened was we spent a lot of time telling white folks a couple of things. One, we told you. You thought we were being angry. You thought we were being
it was all in our mind.
We told you. We told you police for following us. We told you this is why our mothers and fathers told us 10 and 2. We told y'all. Now you all are seeing it. So what I had to do was protect myself against some of the white friends. They're not allies yet, but some of the white friends who've been saying, what do we do? Then they do it, then they disappear. Then they come back after something else. What do we do? They do and they disappear. When those folks came up to me last year, I stiff armed them because I said, I'm going to use a term that old Black folks used to use. I don't have time for hard-headed white folks. We done told you what's going on. You didn't want to do it. Go get a book, Google something. That's what you got to do. But for the folks who are saying, we really didn't know, and we're perpetuating this, and we're teaching lies to our children.
Right.
Help reveal the matrix. Break us out of this stuff. Help us to understand our culpability and then our responsibility to be a part of change. And so our work of Nehemiah has for 30 years been strengthening Black folks.
Yeah.
In the last 7 years, it has been enlightening non-Black folks, understanding it's not my job to fix what you all have benefited from. We will give you the tools and mobilize you. So last year was a lot of saying, don't call me up crying. Talk to your mama who voted for whomever. Talk to your cousins, talk to your bosses, talk to the foundations that you sit on, but don't come and practice your anti-racism rhetoric on me. Right. White people need to talk to white people. And that was our work in 2020, because then that gave me room to just sort of rest and recalibrate, because I was having nightmares. I was having nightmares of people having taking out hits on me. I've had people Zoom bomb me and call me the N-word 200 times in a meeting with my white allies, and we all need to die and stuff. I had to sit down and talk with somebody about that, because my life has never been threatened. And I didn't know if that was a next door neighbor, a parishioner, or somebody in California. But for the first time, in addition to thinking about my own mortality, morbidity because of COVID, I'm now thinking about white supremacists who are now trying to zero me in my efforts and then threatening me. So I found that a lot of my work is to still strengthen Black people, but to let white folks know we're going to show you what's going on, but we need you to do the work. And that was a big part of what we did in 2020.
Appreciate that story, vulnerability.
Can I jump on that? I know you're not supposed to follow the pastor after he's give the sermon, unless the choir's got a good song. Unless you got a good song.
Or you got an offering basket. You got an offering basket. Come on, Deacon.
So this is a song and an offering basket because, again, I found myself in an unusual position of being asked to help companies, and I couldn't use the old playbook. COVID made us all throw away the playbook. And now what was needed was new plays, new thoughts, courageous, bold. And everyone knows that COVID had disproportionate impacts on Black and brown communities. We just like all the other social disparities and inequities, you had this pandemic that had a disproportionate impact financially, emotionally, and mentally on Black and brown people. So let me give you a quick example. I had a CEO says, well, Doc, I'm trying to keep the doors open. I don't want to let anybody go. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to institute a 25% across the board pay cut. That way I don't let anyone go. He says, what do you think, Doc? I paused. I says, I'm going to assume that your intent is good, but I think what you're intending to do is going to have a bad impact. He says, what do you mean? It's fair, it's equal. Everybody's going to take 25. I says, let's think about this for a second. You make 7 figures. You're going to answer to the 25% pay cut across the board, and you're going to impact a Black female in your call center that makes less than $15 an hour at a time when her kids are home, her childcare costs are up, all of her costs are up, and you're going to make her income, you're going to cut her income by 25%. Do you think that's equitable? Do you think that's equitable? So to make a long story short, through some coaching and counseling, I was able to convince my client, the top of the house, the C-suite, all you guys, y'all take 25%, take 30%, and then the next level down, let them take a percentage. And then the next level down, take them a percentage. And the people that are hourly people, in most cases making less than $15 an hour, no cuts. He pondered on it, and he said, Doc, thank you. That was, and so he's able to keep all the employees. And meanwhile, now we're talking about how the organization can thrive on the other side of COVID. But people approach these things with blinders, and what you have to do is say, you've got, just like a car in your blind spot, you're missing something. You whether it's your privilege or whether it's your bias, intentional or unintentional, is preventing you from seeing that what you are tending to do, and again, I'm going to assume good intent, is going to have a bad outcome. So that was the things I was dealing with during COVID. And so, Pastor, I'll toss the mic back to you, Rashad.
Yeah, again, I really appreciate that, fellas. I know when we met last night to kind of have a little bit of prep for today, I shared a story with you all. And I think I'm trying to transition our conversation in a different direction here. I shared a story with you all about recently I was approached by an executive director that leads a major nonprofit in our community for an opportunity to join their board of directors. And after hearing a little bit about the mission, and finding some alignment between my values and what I'm really trying to spend my time and expertise with, I thought it was a good fit. And so I said, yeah, I definitely want to get on board. And so, they offered me an opportunity to join that board of directors. And, as we got up from the table, the individual that leads the organization extended his hand and said, hey, I just want to let you know, most importantly, this is this opportunity is really being presented to you because of your skill set. I don't want you to think it's because you're a minority or because, we're trying to tokenize you. And so at that point, I took my coat off and said, we need to sit back down for a second, right? Because in that moment, I thought it was really imperative for me to talk to this white individual who I know has a network of other white individuals that they deal with, and let them know that, like, we as minorities are not powerless. If you invite me to a situation where I sense, smell, or feel tokenism, I'm going to address it with you professionally. If I don't see the kind of results I want, I'm going to address it again. And if that doesn't go good, I'm going to stop showing up. Right. And so I thought it was really imperative for me in that moment to explain that, like, we are not beholden to you all. We have ability, we have power. And so I kind of want to transition into something we talked about a little bit last night. And Joaquin, you really were behind this idea. Talk a little bit about the power of being the only one in a particular space, about the opportunity of being the only one, because we don't want to leave this as just a deficit mind frame.
When we talk about the concept of systemic constraints or systemic racism, I'm hoping those that are watching today, if you don't know what that is, please take some time to really understand what that means. Because what it is, it's an attempt to hold us back, but it's that attempt that you don't know that really exists. You don't see it, feel it, touch it. You feel it. Matter of fact, let me say that wrong, but you don't like physically, you can't physically see it. You don't physically smell it. You don't know that it exists. It's something that has been systemic for just probably decades and decades. And, for me, when I think about the fact of growing up in Milwaukee and Wisconsin and working in the financial systems and being the only one, there was a lot of times as a young banker, I was very, very angry. And when I was able to get above that fray of anger and understand that if I am the only one here and I potentially can have an impact on not just those of color, but the whole community, what does that mean? And then as through my research, I understood that, I thought maybe if we created more dollars or more loans or very special loans, that would improve my community. And so I moved forward. And guess what? Still, it didn't improve the bottom line. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like, I'm so confused to understand that there's these systemic issues that really held us. And it's really deep conversation around that. But being the only one, I think then gave me an opportunity to just listen, watch, take notes, do my best to understand, because I'm in a place and space where I am the only one. And then there's these liberties that are taken by folks just to speak like I'm not there. Then do as you will, do as you wish, but understand that I'm learning and I'm understanding, so that when I become the CEO of WIDA, and it's not just perceived power, but there's an opportunity for me to have impact. Now I know how to play this. I know how to play it. And it's not, there's no sinister intent behind it, because there are people, including people from every side of the aisle, by the way. There's white folks, there's black folks, there's Latinos, there's Republicans, there's Democrats, there's individuals from all kinds of industries that are asking, how do we get at these disparities? And finally, because I was the only one, because I actively listened, because I asked these questions, finally, I'm able to get at issues that are systemic. I hope that makes sense, because it makes all the sense in the world to me.
It makes sense.
I'll leave it right there.
I want to concur with Brother Joaquin, and then suggest a slightly different take on it. In another life, I was a recruiter for the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I love Bucky. My mom went there, met my wife there. My daughter's a student there. We get down with UW-Madison because it's a great training ground. It's a microcosm of the real world. You can survive there. You really understand how to navigate seas of whiteness in this, at least in this country. But what we learned as a recruiter is that it was very difficult to have a student have a good experience if you recruit someone, say, from DC or Detroit without a cohort. So after a number of years, we started growing and bringing cohorts in. So let's bring 6 or 7 students from DC, from Detroit, because then they got community. We got to say to these organizations that are not bringing us on as a token, is to say, all right, I'll come on, but I've got a friend that's a banker, a friend that's an attorney. bring 3 of us on, and it needs to be men and women. Well, we only have 3 spaces. Oh, I only have 1 space. Okay, all right, I understand. So let me know when you're ready for me to come on. Because this whole thing about being the only one, I just put it this way. I've been a nonprofit professional for 30 years. I've started 3 or 4 nonprofits that are still operating. So that means I know how to wash dishes, sweep floors, hire staff, fire staff, raise money, build boards. I have never been asked to be on a finance committee. I'm currently raising $22 million for a project, a Black-led project, a Center for Black Excellence in Culture. I've had to run my nonprofit for 30 years, build an extension to our church. How do you not ask me about a finance committee? Then when you're redoing your website, and I've just recreated mine, I don't get asked to be on that committee. You know what committee? I am always on diversity, community relations, understanding outreach. I have run organizations, started them, and none of the skills, I did not start those because I know how to talk about diversity. I know how to create programs and evaluate them and hire staff and make good decisions. And so even though they say it's not out of tokenism, when the diversity topic comes up, then they turn to me to see what it is I want to say. I say we bring people on the boards in cohorts to see really how serious they are. And I get the sense that there's power in those meetings. But 2 things I just want to say briefly. One, I live in a community where white power brokers race Black people against each other like we're jockeys.
Right.
What they don't know is that Black people talk to Black people. They are so aloof in thinking that we are so happy with the level of whiteness that we have access to that they don't understand that we talk to each other. So we can say, watch this dude, watch this person, watch this company. This is what they said about you. And so part of this is they want to get behind the Black person that's making the change. The person of color is making change. And so we're often pitted against each other. And so we run the risk, in my opinion, of thinking we're special or smarter or sharper if we're the only one. Then I can get kind of comfortable being the go-to person when you want to ask questions. I think it's important to refer and say, ask this person, ask that person, bring some others on. The other thing, I think the real power is when Black people organize Black people, when Black people can organize outside of white spaces. You know, I watched Judas and the Black Messiah. The threat that Fred Hampton was that he could organize outside of white circles and bring people back from different factions, different backgrounds. The true power is when you run your own game, run your own company, do your own work.
Right.
They don't invite you to those rooms until they think you can bring something.
Right.
Some affirmation or something. So I think the real power is being on top of our game so that they want us so badly that if it's not in a cohort when they're recruiting us, we can say, well, no, I'm not available right now. I'm not interested. What committees are you trying to get me on? Let me think about it. Let me pray about it. Let me try to process this. I think that what makes us powerful is that we are strong in our own communities and we know how to influence their communities. And sometimes those appointments are to keep an eye on us. So I think the real authority comes in our own space, and they want to try to control some of that power by bringing Black, Latino, brown, bringing brown power brokers into their white circles so they can get an insight into what we're doing.
Right. Man, I hate follow. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Joaquin. I can't follow him. G be bringing the truth. Go ahead, Joaquin.
Can I elevate something that Dr. G said, and I think it's really important because we've been speaking about, you know, our work or our interaction with white folks. But I want to elevate something that's really important. I think that I'm going to misquote it, but I think Abraham Lincoln had a quote where it's like, if you give a man power, then you will see the true nature or the true nature of his character. And that is interesting because if we are the only one and we get this misperceived idea that we have this power, are we really sharing? Are we really looking to the left and right and saying, I don't know it all. Let me bring in my brother Shelton or my brother Alex into the conversation. So we shouldn't be so quick to just say, you know, that these white folks are doing this too. Like there's some pointing that we got to put back at ourselves, because I know y'all seen it enough times where we know we've seen our brothers and sisters, they're at that helm. And it's like, where are you where's that balance and check system in your own head to make sure that you are representing us correctly and you're elevating the rest of us?
I mean, you guys took all my points. I love these brothers, and more importantly, what they're saying, because they're talking truth. Everything I've heard today here has been factual and truth, and I know it because I've been in the military, I've been in higher ed, I've been in corporate. Now I'm running my own business, and I'm on the outside now. So people pay me a lot of money to come and say, "Hey, help me. Well, how should we do this?" But I gotta go. I'm gonna link what Joaquin said to Dr. G about what it tangibly looks like. So a company, one of my clients, we were talking about one topic. How can we get a Dr. G in here? How can we get a Joaquin here? I says, okay, that's all well and good. But let's turn the subject to something that you can do today, not something, trying to get a cohort that could take some time. And a quick example, I said, you guys are, and I apologize for the crude example, but this is the actual example I share with the client. You guys are spending thousands, tens of thousands of dollars on toilet paper. I know you are. It's just a commodity that is just like pens, paper, and everything else you're buying. But you're buying it with a national firm. Why wouldn't you look right in this community, your own community? There are 3 Black companies that I know. No, actually 2 Black companies. One that's owned by a vet, one that's owned by a woman, that you could buy that same commodity from. And that $10,000 would stay right here in this community. And you talk about the power of one. That's when you have that power and you are willing to try to get to outcomes that are beneficial to Black and brown people and the company. When it's not all about you, when you're there and you're saying, I don't know everything. Let me bring in a Dr. G or Joaquin so they can see, by the way, there's a lot of other smart, people that look like me. But you got to be able to have a tangible, something that they can do. Sometimes we make a mistake of trying to fix everything overnight. There's nothing wrong with taking it one step at a time. This company now that was spending, later I found out they weren't spending tens of thousands of dollars. They were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on commodities, pens, paper, copier paper, toilet paper, and now all of that, 80% of that business is going to small companies that are owned by minorities, by women, by LGBTQ plus owned people that are disability and whatever. You can have impact even when you're the only one, if you can carve out where you want to have that impact and then realize you don't know everything, bring some other people to the table that can, to the conversation that can bring some other ideas. So I love everything I've heard here. Love it.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, guys. Let's take an opportunity to really try to reframe this topic. We've got our first question that came in from the audience. So thank you for the individual who sent that question. It's open to everybody. It wasn't directed at anyone in particular. And it reads, could someone on the panel please discuss the role of language in the process of gaining access to traditionally white systems where access has been denied to people of color? So again, the question is, could someone discuss the role of language in the process of gaining access to traditionally white?
I'll take 30 seconds and I'll pass to my brothers. I will tell you what I learned and what I practice today. Talk in the language of the people you're talking to. If you're talking to people in finance and it's about money, then you gotta be able to communicate that way. If it's no matter what it is, the language, I know the person is talking about, political correctness or whatever, but I think the bigger thing is, are you in communication? This is what is taught in every basic communication. Communicate to people the way they want to be communicated to. Don't communicate based on what you're comfortable with and confident with and competent. You have to learn the language of the person and the people you're trying to influence and interact with. I'll toss it to the brothers.
Yeah, I want to be real clear about something with our younger men of color that are listening. Again, is that doesn't mean that you guys, I know there was a term that was used, I think it was in the 90s, the word ebonics. Or when someone of color makes fun of how a white person sounds, they try to over enunciate. We're not talking about enunciation when you talk about language. We're talking about words. We're talking about very technical words. that is when you have to use those words and make sure that, first of all, you know what the heck you're talking about. Number one. And then number two, make sure you're using them appropriately, and then make sure you're using them. So to be very specific, what I'm talking about is the fact that if you are younger and you're looking to draw resources to your project, whatever that is from the financial systems, if you go in and you talk about, well, my people are suffering and incarceration is high and all these things, do you expect somebody that doesn't understand it or comes from that to understand that and feel a heart attachment to that? Maybe, but probably not. Right. Now, if you understand the fact that that bank, that they get federal credit if they support your project in this community, and you then bring that to their attention and saying, if you support this project, not only will it have a social impact, but at the same time, you will get credit from your federal compliance agency. Guess what? You just spoke their language. And I didn't ask you to talk this, that, or anywhere. I didn't ask you to enunciate. We asked you to speak a very technical language that will help you move forward.
Yep.
Yeah. I concur. I can't add anything else to that.
I appreciate it. Hey, so yesterday, again, we were prepping for this. Dr. G, you kind of introduced this idea of justified anger. You want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. I had a situation where I'm the longest serving clergy member in our city. I've been involved for over 35 years in a senior role in a faith community. And I was pulled over in my own church parking lot by the police. Was never cited for anything. 2 cars followed me in my parking lot on a Saturday night for a standing meeting. And I was meeting a white colleague there who's part of my pastoral team. The police wanted to know what I was doing there. And they asked my white pastor. I signed his check. I hired him. They asked him to corroborate my story. Was I really who I said I was? And my name is on the church. I got keys to it. As I sat there, as they were running my plates and everything, I felt the American dream unravel. Right. It wasn't a matter of just getting pissed off and saying, I'm going to call somebody. I actually felt this loss of a belief that I could become anyone I wanted to be in this country. It didn't matter if I have an earned doctorate degree, a homeowner, that my family has 13 degrees from Wisconsin. Like, none of that mattered in that dark parking lot. As I watched white men discuss my faith. My white associate had to fend for me. And I just went to writing and I said, I'm going to talk about this. Nobody wants to hear a Black middle-class man who lives in Fitchburg, a suburb of Madison, bemoan racial disparity. But I said, screw it. I'm going to talk about my experiences and how we don't come to the table. We don't shape anything. White leaders ask us to rubber stamp everything, and they get mad at us when we say, well, have you reached out to the Urban League? Have you talked to the NAACP leaders? Have you tried recruiting through, Madison 365? We'll actually get an attitude when you try to explain what's going on. So for me, Justified Anger was first an article that morphed into a movement that looked at the systemic realities of racism. That is not just about making more backpacks and more sandwiches and giving people more bus passes, all of which is necessary. But none of those empower us. And I don't want to just be at the table. Justified Anger said, no, I don't want to be at the table. I want to own the damn Black forest because I want to cut down the trees and build the kind of table I want. And then I want to decide on the cuisine and who I want to serve it. And then I'll start thinking about people that can be around the table. And so, but this is about bringing me in after everything has been decided and just rubber stamp it. The Justified Anger is about turning that on its head. So that started with educating our non-Black allies, but also listening and canvassing the Black community and asking, what do we want to see in order to have a change? And so our work involved doing one of the most in-depth Black snapshot of the Black community by the Black community in Madison's history, so that when I would get white pushback, I would say, well, listen, I've been talking to Black people who are faculty members, doctors, formerly incarcerated, single moms. And so if you think you're more expert than the hundreds of Black people who've spoken into this goes back to language. I'm from Madison, Wisconsin. We're intellectual if we're nothing else. We are intellectual if we consider ourselves the Berkeley of the Midwest. So when you start footnoting your stuff, and I penned the letter, I wasn't an interview. I wrote Justified Anger because I want them to know Black folks can write. We can articulate in writing what we're thinking and what we're feeling. And so in Madison, I also said, I was your paper boy. I was a Weeblo. I was on homecoming court. I went to UW Matt. I kept my nose clean So when I said I'm as Madisonian as they come, and this is what y'all have done to me, I made it almost impossible to try to pick my story apart. So the purpose of Justified Anger is to say, let's stop with this whole white liberalism, this whole thing about being progressive. And then when a Black person has a thought, you want to discredit them and call them angry and then pit them against other Black leaders. So Justified Anger is really about bringing our voices to the table, saying that we need to set the table. We need to set the agenda for the proliferation of our culture, the education of our people, the rebuilding of our economic prowess. We need to do that because y'all want to give us handouts, and we want the forest. I want to hire work. I don't want to fish for a day. I want to own the pond, and I want to hire fishermen to get the kind of fish I want. So Justified Anger is really about shaking up the systemic reality and say that we cannot have true justice unless we shake this up, turn the crayon box upside down, and recreate some new systems, because we can't win at this because it was designed for us to not win. That's not saying I'm a victim. It's not saying that I'm not smart and I can't do it. I'm smart enough to know the deck is stacked against me. And so I'm going to start building allegiance with my Black folks so we can demand what we need, rather than begging white power brokers to give us a pittance of something that helps us get by. We want to get over and not just get by. So Justified Anger is about saying, yeah, I'm pissed. I'm angry. And you may not think that a person who's in faith or a pastor should be doing that. I'm mad as hell because this stuff has been going on for almost a half a millennium and we still talking about it. And I don't want to talk about it. I want to see a shift in power. And if it's not given, we're going to find a way to get it and create our own. But I'm not going to apologize for being Black, and I'm not going to beg to be in power.
I really appreciate that. I really do. We're winding down. We've only got about 8 minutes to go. And I wanted to touch on something that we talked about briefly yesterday as well, was this whole idea of a revolving door of minority power and talent in this state. And one of the things that I love most about Madison 365 is I think that they really create a network for us. I know for me personally, it was so awesome to get a chance to get connected to so many other leaders of color, male and female. And so I really look to the work that they do to help keeping us connected, to help provide leadership opportunities for us, to help keep elevating us as they do with the multiple awards that they hand out every year. And so, speaking on that Black revolving door a little bit, if people keep leaving the state, we're going to find more and more of us being the only one. You guys have any thoughts about that? I know, Dr. Shelton, you left the community.
Yeah, I'll be brief, and so I can yield a lot of time back to my other brothers. I had the privilege of being in the Appleton, the Fox Valley community for 2 years as the chief diversity officer for Oshkosh Corp. And I shared yesterday with the group that I've been all over the world serving the country, and as a corporate leader, been in a lot of places. And I shocked the group yesterday when I told them that I had preferred the Appleton area to Allentown, Pennsylvania, which was only 57 miles from my birthplace of Philadelphia. We had a really good, robust conversation about that. I know that Joaquin and the doc maybe talk about this migration, but I will tell you this. I'm going to take my last 30 seconds to tip my hat to Madison 365, because I believe that it could be the most powerful opportunity to recruit Black talent and keep it in the state. So I know they're going to talk about the migration out, but the more we can do panels like this and let people know that there is a robust intellectual community there of people of color. I don't know. I can't do anything about the cold and the snow, but at least your words. We need to do better about getting the word out about the community that's there.
Appreciate that. Anybody else want to follow up there?
I would just say one of the things I've asked about the revolving door of Black people, and I'm sure this is true for Black and brown people in Wisconsin, is what is it about Wisconsin that makes it attractive to folks who Wisconsin says it doesn't want to have here, and it can't retain and attract and retain the kind of Black folks it says that it won't. I don't think Madison's going to lack diversity, but the folks who can afford to not be in Wisconsin will not be in Wisconsin. And those who don't have options will be here. Madison's going to experience diversity. Wisconsin's going to experience it one way or another. Question is the kind of diversity they want, because people are coming here because there's something about the disparities that's making folks want to prey on that. And that's why we're seeing the increase in crime, because they know franchise folks are here. So the black people you want, you can't get, and the black people you don't want, you can't get rid of.
Ooh, interesting.
So the next question I have, when we talked last night too, we talked about it being important for us to share our lived experience, to be vulnerable, provide our expertise. But we also talked about wanting to move beyond words and giving people some tangible things that they might be able to utilize on their own personal journeys. And so the last question I want to address to you all is, what advice would you give to any person about to enter a workplace that is predominantly white? And what do you wish you may have known when you entered the workforce? But the major question is really, what advice would you give to somebody who's about to enter a predominantly white workspace for the first time?
I'm going to take that real quick. Don't think, and I'm not telling them anything they don't know, but I'm going to say it anyway. Don't enter into your first job thinking it's going to be your only job or your last job. Realize the power that you have, particularly people that we label as millennials. That you're going to come in, you're going to be there, and don't think about it as being your first training ground. And then the minute that you're presented with another opportunity that you think is going to continue to, let you continue your forward momentum, don't be afraid. Don't get trapped into this false dating game that you're dating this company and this company is going to love you forever and all that. That's not the way things work. So they probably already know that. But I want to underscore that.
Appreciate that.
I'll speak about this from a wealth capacity. If you think that your wealth is only and this is probably in Wisconsin, so let's make this to be true in Wisconsin. If you think your value proposition and your wealth is only in the Black or brown community, I'd ask you to think about that. And I'll tell you from a quick story of the fact that there's a gentleman that owns a very small Mexican restaurant in Milwaukee, started it about 40 years ago. And 30 years ago, when you'd walk in, it was like 10 tables and it was all Latinos that he was serving. Fast forward 20, 25 years, when he started opening up and serving to others, and when he started making margaritas for white and Black and brown, the gentleman's bottom line is worth in excess of $10 million right now, because he opened up his doors and his sense of opportunity, that his opportunity wasn't just in the Latino community. And so keep that in mind. For whatever value you take out of that, is that there is value. You just have to find it and search where it is to understand that you are with and working with other people that are not like you. There's a value to understanding that.
And I would just say quickly, understand what you want to get out of that organization. Do your homework before you get the job. If they don't give to communities of color, don't hire communities of color, there are no communities of color represented in the shareholders on the board, they don't think you're going to go in there and change it. That's your job. Go get your paycheck and go take care of your family. But don't go in there thinking you're going to change the world and they don't want to be changed. Yeah. Secondly, get a sense of community. Get a sense of, connect with it. Find folks, because you'll give yourself to that work because you want to be the first one there and the last one to leave. And if you don't have community, meaning our people, you won't be rooted, and that'll eat you up. So make sure that you save some of your soul from that career so that you can give it to your community and have some people who remind you that who you are and your value is not your paycheck.
Yep. Yeah. What he said. Yeah.
Yeah. I really appreciate those contributions, gentlemen. Well, we're coming up here on the last few seconds of the call. Does anyone have anything that they want to share in closing?
Again, I just want to say thank you to Henry Sanders and the whole team at Madison 365 for what they do every day. I appreciated the brother when I was there in Appleton. He had a vision. To see that vision come to be manifested in something like this that's never been happened. Couldn't be prouder of Henry and the team. And please, keep doing what you're doing, and I'll support you any way I can.
Thank you.
And to the sponsors, by the way, to the sponsors.
I'll just add that I appreciate the space, that there's room where we get a chance to enjoy and celebrate our voices. And I too just want to tip my hat to Brother Sanders in Madison 365. And the other thing is, we're working on a Center for Black Excellence in Culture, because we're understanding that we're going to have to build community and tell our own stories and not wait for others to do it with us. And there's money and there's space for Black people to bemoan what has happened to us, but we need dollars that will help us to begin to build and move ahead. So there's money to study, there's money to have think tanks, and there's money to complain. We need money to build, create wealth, and create spaces that will slow that revolving door on Madison. Black people can do some things that can make Madison livable for everyone. And we're trying to eradicate the tale of two cities. And so I want to do more than just complain. I want to put some actions together that makes this place attractive to Black and brown people.
Thank you. Joaquin, you all good? Anything in closing?
What they
with that, yep. But with that, everybody, I just want to make sure that you all take, it's always a challenge. I always have to issue a challenge when I'm closing out something. I challenge everybody to make sure that you connect with people during this. We're getting connected with some incredible leaders here in the state and across the country, if you haven't noticed in some people's bios where they're from. And I just challenge you all to find a couple of people that you hear today that you speak to, or either today or tomorrow that you hear, reach out to them, make them contacts. I know it's been really fruitful for me. Making contacts with people that I've met through the work that Madison 365 allows me to do. And so that's my challenge, is making sure that you find one or two individuals that you highlight and actually reach out with an email. Hey, how you doing? Saw and heard your words. They were powerful. How can we connect? And with that, I just want to thank everybody for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Other sessions.
Great job,
Thank you.
Rashad.
Great job.
This is 365 Media.